Hi friends, Robert here from Diverse Opals. Today we're looking at a small parcel of rough boulder opal. A couple of years ago, a friend came to me with a miner, that is a boulder miner, came to me with something the size of probably half a cob, a loaf, like a loaf of bread, and it was broken in half. And on the top, we could see this section of colour here. These pieces here. This was obvious. And running down lower from the top, looking through the side, we could see a milky bar of colour. And from that side profile, we could see a milky bar. It wasn't obvious as to where this milky bar was actually heading in the stone, but it was a bit of a challenge, or a bit of a point of interest. This light here in itself was of interest to me. I thought that I liked the colour, I liked the pattern, and it's not finished, of course, it's still in the rough state, but I could see that what was present there was of interest to me. And maybe the milky bar section was going to be a bonus. So we made the deal, and I went to my friend's workshop where he had a larger saw, and we started to chop up this piece. We cut these pieces off the top, and then we started to work on the milky section. Now, this is what came from, let me wet this, because it's just drying out a little bit. This isn't necessarily what people are looking for in boulder opal, but I don't mind it. I think it actually has beauty in itself, and this is not all that's come from it. These pieces have been partially had the top of the ironstone removed, and there's still ironstone to be taken off of this one here, but still it's a nice acquisition as far as I'm concerned, and I encourage anybody that buys a parcel to try and extract everything they can out of it, even if they feel that it's not the sort of material for them. Of course, you can on-sell some of the lower grade if that's not for you, but I encourage you to process it all, because there are often hidden gems in our boulder opal. Considering the fact that I've already cut and polished one of these, I haven't seen how these turn out. So I think I will be happy with the way they look, but what we'll do now is we'll go to the workshop, and I'll have a closer look and decide decide to process one of these, and we'll see what we can get as a result. I'm going to start out with a coarse sintered diamond burr. This is the best way to get rid of all the ironstone that's on top, and I'll be doing this dry, so let's go with this. It would appear that the majority of ironstone is, in fact, with all the dirt that's showing on the top of the stone, would appear to me that it's actually on top, and that in fact we have not gone through the bar of colour. That's what I'm hoping for. So we'll just keep cleaning and smoothing out all of the ironstone areas, hoping that we'll get to as close as possible a cleaner face piece of opal, piece of boulder opal. I'm just going to wet this to see if we've got any clear indication of what's going on. Yes, this looks like it's gone through the opal already, and there's not much we can do about it. What I think we'll do is go to the next stage, which is a medium, and we'll see what happens after that. So we just change the burr from a coarse to a medium. These once again are sintered diamond burrs. They're going to last a lot longer than a plated burr. So if you can afford to buy one, or buy some, I recommend you invest in them. We're not only removing the ironstone that is on the surface of the stone, but we're also trying to iron out any lumps or bumps. We want the surface to look smooth and have a nice flowing nature. We don't want really sharp edges or dirt if we can avoid it. But to achieve a good result, we have to grind every surface. We're finished with our hard sintered diamond burr, and now I'm going to go to a silicon carbide rubberized abrasive. This one's a little bit worn already, but they are normally a little bit longer. This is a bullet shape, and the bullet shape obviously allows me to get into all of the grooves and the tight areas that are actually on the face of the boulder. If your burr hasn't got this, you can actually bring it into shape with just a hard file. While it's spinning, you can hold it up against the side and it'll help bring in the shape. But normally when I start working with these, I start with the pointy end in working in all of the areas that are actually little grooves, because with wear it's going to become rounded very quickly. So let's go to this process now, and what we're going to do is remove any scratches just to help even out the surface of the boulder, and this will be our next step. So with regards to speed, I'd say it's probably about 15,000 RPM. Once again, this is a dry process. As I said, I'm just going to start by getting into these little grooves and crevices while I still have the sharpness or the point on the end. Keep the movement going backwards and forwards. If you've got a high torque machine, which this one is, it can generate a lot of heat very quickly if you remain in a static position, and you don't want to be heating the surface of your opal too quickly. Some people will say, why aren't you using it wet? Well, we can use it wet, but it makes it more difficult to actually see where you've been. And I do a lot of boulder work with dry, and we don't have any problems. So you just have to keep moving, keep your tool going backwards and forwards to avoid heating up the areas of the stone, because as I said, you can crack it, or you'll end up with what we call a white spot. It will just be a white spot on the surface of your stone, and that's basically, it's got so hot it's actually fracturing from underneath. So here we are, we're starting to get this point back again from just using the side surface. So if I want to go back into getting into the grooves, I can do that because I've got the point back again. So if you're going to be using a rubber abrasive, if you want to follow this process, make sure that your grade of choice is not something that's coarser than the previous grade. I guess it can be the same grade, and there are different grading systems between diamond and silicon carbide. So you have to be aware, you have to find out what is the right sort of grade for you. And from memory, this particular grade of rubberized abrasive is what they call a medium. So choose the right one. Don't go too coarse and don't go too fine. Too fine will make it a slow process for you to achieve your goal. And so the next thing that we'll be doing is moving on to diamond paste. I'm choosing to use 1200 grade. We use CSS, high concentration diamond paste, and this is a logical transition from the last hard grade to getting toward the final goal of a good polish. So I'm going to be using a medium hard felt. What we need to do is to first make sure we have sufficient coating of diamond on the stone, and normally it's just a matter of applying a small amount, maybe the size of a match head or a grain of rice, and it's all relative to the size of the stone that you're working on. Of course, if it's a small stone, you'll go smaller. If it's a bigger stone, you'll go bigger. And we're going to use a felt. I'm going to start out with a big felt so I get a lot of coverage quickly, and then to get into the smaller crevices, I'm going to use a smaller one to get to be able to get into the smaller areas. I'm going to be using the slowest grade possible on my machine, and it may be difficult for your machine to. It's hard to know what your speed is on your machine, but I've said this before, that torque is important in getting good results on your stone. In the process of polishing, just work your way across the stone evenly. Preferably start on one corner, one end, and just systematically work your way across the stone. Once again, don't sit in one position, don't hold the polishing felt in one position, because this does, once again, generate a lot of heat. So you don't want to be cracking your stone through heat. Sometimes you will use up a felt very quickly, and what I normally do is have a bag or a little container that I keep my felts in, because you've got to try and avoid contamination. Don't just throw all of your different grade diamond charged felts into a container hoping that you're going to continue to get good results. What happens is they may contaminate each other, so if you can, keep yourself a container, label it the grade that you're using so as to avoid cross-contamination. And don't try and use the same felt with a different grade. It's not, well, the only way you can do that is by going to a coarser grade. You can't use it finer, but they're not very expensive, and you're probably better off just having a dedicated felt for each grade that you're using. I've now changed the felts to a smaller bullet head shape. This is around about a 6mm as compared to the last one, which was about an 8 to 10mm. I want to get into the little grooves. With patience and experience, you'll learn to work every area of your stone. Sometimes in our haste to get to the finishing line, we overlook certain areas and we only polish the highlights of the stone, or the high points, or the bigger areas that are easy to access. You really need to just be patient and spend time getting into those little tight areas, just making sure that you haven't missed anything, because although the stone will look nice when you're finished, you really want to get the whole stone looking really shiny and bright. So take your time. Okay, I've changed the felt over to a knife edge, and the advantage in using a knife edge means that I can get into deeper, narrower, sharper little areas in the stone that I can't get into with a round head point or a bigger head. So I've put a little bit more diamond paste into the area that I want to work in. This is an area of the stone that had to me it was an obvious cavity in it. Just get into the areas of the stone that, as I said, you can't get into with a bigger size head. So use the most appropriate wheel for the job at hand. It's ideal to have a number of different shapes of felts on hand. As I said, they're not overly expensive, and it just helps to finalise getting that nice polish in areas that you can't get in with bigger size felts. Okay, I've finished with the 1200 now. I've now wiped the stone with a clean tissue and with a bit of water, and we're just wiping off any of the excess of the 1200 because we don't want it to carry over onto the next grade. Well, here is the final result of the piece that we chose from the parcel last time, and I'm happy with the way it's come out, up to a point. There was a potch bar running through the back of this, and my wife in her wisdom thought that she'd test it to see how strong it was, and guess what? Now we've got two stones. So, as I said, this bar ran through the back here. And although I tried several times during the process to break it on this bar, I wasn't successful. Maybe I weakened it, but my wife decided to test it, and as I said, she broke it, and now we're going to have two stones. But I think you'll agree that this didn't turn out too bad in the sense of colour. So what are your thoughts? Do you agree with me on this? Do you think this is a nice piece? Leave a comment. And once again, thank you for those of you who are leaving comments, and for those of you who are new subscribers. Continue to subscribe. If you're new, leave a comment, leave a like. I'm Robert for Diverse Opals.